we're getting out of the car, we're walking into a showing, we have our buyers with us, and I know we're not home inspectors, but there are some things that we are trained to notice so we can talk to our buyers about, and it may help them honestly make a decision whether they want to put an offer in on this house or not. So, what are some of the first things you see? I know for myself, I take note of the grading of the home. So, if the land is sloping towards the house or away from the house, that's definitely going to be an issue for water. And, you don't want water running towards your basement or your foundation, obviously. So, what are some things you notice?
For me, I mean, I learned from Chris. So the things I learned is before you even get in the house is there's a few things to explain. There's obviously grading and the condition of the roof are big things. Grading, I bought my house 7 years ago, 6 years ago, and I still haven't fixed it. That was one of the big things that came up in the home inspection. And it's not that it's just super expensive or it's hard. It's time consuming. It's a lot of sweat equity put into it. So, I mean, Chris had mentioned like there's a inspector we used to use, and his theory was if you had a hole in the side of your foundation, it was positively graded away from the foundation. In theory, then you won't get as much water or get any water in there. But obviously, grading is a huge thing with the city we live in, and it's being a little bit more swampy. So those are definitely things we want to look for is grading. It's harder in the wintertime, and sometimes you can see signs, just on the parging or inside the house. But grading is obviously a huge thing that we want to speak on, and it's nothing that I think kills deals or anything that anybody should be fearful of. It's just something that should be fixed.
Right.
And I say that, but
I think it's the number one thing that's overlooked. That's the biggest thing is like you had said, when they do dig that hole for the foundation, they build the forms for your foundation, they pour the concrete in those forms, and then they backfill all of that loose dirt back around it. And even in new homes, it'll settle. And as it settles, that's when the grade becomes negative and the water will roll back towards your foundation. So even with a new house, if you have negative grade back towards your house, you'll get that water pooling, that snow pooling, and that's when even a good foundation will be stressed to the point, water is one of those things that it will find its way through eventually. So to protect yourself from that, just to positively grade your house, build up that dirt like Curtis is mentioning, so that the water runs away or downspouts. All those things are very important little things that people don't necessarily look for that we like to see as soon as we kind of get to the house.
And another spot that we like to keep our eye on is underneath the deck, because I know for our house we had the composite deck board and we're like, oh, awesome, lifetime decking, but underneath there was like a 3-foot drop of dirt towards the foundation, so we had to tear it all up and regrade around the house, but that's just part of it. But when we go and show a house to our buyers, we like to try to look as best as we can.
Especially covered decks, you don't see them, and I find that so it's out of sight, out of mind, and if you really look at it, it's actually not great, and it's hard, and I'm sure there's ways to not have to rip up your deck, but it's even more work.
And Amber, having done that, it was a lot of work, but I'm sure that gave you guys a lot of peace of mind to know that it was done properly, and
absolutely.
Now that it's done, you don't have to worry about it. Right?
Yes, and we did actually, when we tore drywall out of the one basement room, we did find a foundation crack, and we never had any water issues because we did the grading.
Yep, preemptive.
Sump pump are huge too. Like they're hard. And I'm guilty of this too because of the thaw and frost. You take your hose off and it just continues to pour out. Well, yeah, it goes into your weeping tile and back anything. It's a continuous cycle, but it weighs the earth down too. So then then you have big holes from your sump pumps and don't get to that. We see that a lot.
Yeah, if your sump pump is discharging outside, it's so important to have a concrete splash pad there so it's not wearing that hole, right? So it's diverting it evenly around instead of just pouring into that one spot and then recirculating back through the heating tile.
I've seen cool options, people heat tracing their sump pump line so that
my external.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you think that all homes in Grand Prairie should have one? Because I show homes that don't.
Sump pump?
Yeah.
Depends on the build of home. I can't remember the era. I think it was
they're mandatory now. It was I believe it was
Mid-90s.
they were mandatory to do. So prior to that, they still had weeping tile. The weeping tile was set to the city, which is the ultimate situation. But
the city doesn't
then
know that.
they came up with a brilliant idea to make us put a mechanical piece of equipment in there that fails, and that's
Well,
an unfortunate reality.
The city guy I talked to said all of the houses plumbing into the city system was just overloading the system.
Yeah,
So he said they made it plumb out so that, you know, evaporation would take care of some of the water, maybe it would run off into, you know, into the grass more, you know.
Yeah.
It just to mitigate some of the water.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of sump pumps, it's also really important to have a sensor on your sump pump.
Yes.
And what would we tell our buyers for the reasoning for that? Why do we recommend
I
that?
have a perfect example. Last summer we were camping, excuse me, and it was like a monsoon. So I texted my father-in-law and said, "Hey, can you go check on the sump pump?" Blah blah blah. Yep, everything is fine. Well, it was pumping so hard at one point, blew off the hose, and the sump pump was just sitting to the side, so constantly running for the whole time we were gone, and flooded my daughter's bedroom.
Oh,
So it was great that my father-in-law went and checked on it, and it wasn't wrecked at that time, but an alarm coming to my phone while I was camping would have been able to probably mitigate a lot of costs for me.
I tell all of my buyers when there's a sump pump, always have a battery backup because your power is gonna go out during a storm. When the rain is coming down, the water is coming in. If you have a battery backup, you're good if the power goes out. You don't have to worry. I know a friend of ours, he had the alarm when he was out of town and then it's like, oh crap, now what?
Yeah.
So,
It's big for insurance too.
another big thing to quickly touch on too is where to put that sensor. A lot of people will put that sensor on top of the concrete outside of
When
the
it's already
sump pit,
flooded.
which means that it's not going off until your basement's flooded.
Right.
Having it on the inside, underneath of that cap, a few inches to, you know, a half a foot above where your discharge line is when it drops. That means as soon as your pump fails, you'll get that notification, and you do have some time with the volume of weeping tile left to fill in your sump pit to get to it before you have any water.
You know what, I've seen something really cool on some new builds, I don't remember which ones they
Grand
are.
Built is big on it, I just don't.
It's fantastic, they build a sump pump hole and then they build a gap about that much more with a hole, a drain hole as well, so it doesn't flood your basement, and it'll go into there if it
Yeah,
overfills.
re-pour the floor and they put a box around the sump pump, so that if your sump did fail, then it would overload and drain into the city, so
I
it doesn't
noticed
flood
that,
your
yeah.
basement.
I noticed
It's
that.
something that I wish was code,
Yeah,
because it's definitely something, you know, with insurance purposes that everybody is leery of, you know, like I said, it's a mechanical part that will fail eventually, and to alleviate that with a backup system in case of is always
it's
huge.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I just recently had to have a plumber come to my house. Shout out to Tyler, what was his name?
Tyler McKean,
Tyler McKean, thank
TMK
you.
Plumbing and Heating.
Yeah, thank you very much. I called him, Chris gave me his number. I called him, he literally came by within an hour. It was like 8 p.m. at night. So thank you so much, Tyler. He came by and helped me diagnose the issue, which was the washing machine leaking down through the floor. But anyways, that was one of the suggestions he gave me, was get a sensor. You can get them on Amazon and put them everywhere. And they're just so easy and
Yeah, Tyler will be someone we'll
inexpensive.
try and get on this podcast eventually to talk
Yeah.
about certain things. I know he's an expert in poly B replacement and such as well,
Oh,
so.
that's another good thing to talk about, poly B. What is it? Do we notice it as realtors? Yes, we do, and you should have a realtor looking for that. And most recently, this just came to my mind, there was a Facebook post this past week, and there was a lady, and she was talking about, she said, that her realtor told her she was doomed because her house had poly B. Now, I have a couple of things to say about that. Us realtors, we know that yes, it does take a house longer and potentially harder to sell when your house has poly B because it's harder to insure, it's prone to leaks. But I mean, I doubt very much if that realtor said those words. You know, we can't really say that, but she may have taken it that way. But let's have a discussion about it. Poly B, what do you think?
I've noticed in the last couple years alone that the stigma has gotten far worse against poly B than it was just a couple years ago. It was, you know, it's fairly common in 90s homes, but it does have a bit of a lifespan and it is a subpar material for plumbing. But it's not a doomsday thing that everybody thinks it is. It's just a bit more challenging and it can be overcome. I've helped lots of buyers
Right.
purchase homes with poly B.
But if it was a 90s thing, we're talking that's 35 to 40 years old now.
Right.
Right.
So
it
we're
needs-
getting there. I did bring a quote. It's an actual quote because people think, oh my God, I have to replace the poly B in my house. What is it, $20,000-$30,000?
Mhm.
There's a quote for and it's quite a large home. It's a 2,039 square foot, that's above ground only. Square foot home, 5 bedroom, 3.5 bath. So this quote includes all labor and materials to replace all the poly B piping in the house and includes the cutting of the drywall where required, removal of all the poly B piping and replacing with PEX, cutting holes in basement drywall, etc., etc. It doesn't include the replacement of the drywall, so that part is separate, but this quote for this house is only $6,405.
I'm gonna chime in about the drywall part. When I first started and heard about poly B and having to do that, I was just like, oh my god, what a mess! They're gonna rip and tear all your walls apart. It's almost like surgery. Like this is a very
To the right
small
plumber.
Yeah, to the right plumber and
So
houses for sure.
And that's where I feel a lot of these quotes are coming in extremely high, and it's good that you said that, because the plumber that we do refer, who is an expert in this, treats it like surgery.
Yeah.
He finds the common point in the house and he'll cut out a small square and he's able to pull all of that poly B back through that one spot. Whereas a lot of times people will tear an entire ceiling out when it's unnecessary, and likely it's, for lack of a better word, laziness, because they don't want to find that common point. It's easier for them to cut, rip and tear, get it out and get it done, but then the cost to you is exponential because of that. Moreover, another thing I wanted to just explain with poly B is, I believe that a well-educated agent knows, and we've been through this, Amber, the last little while, a few times, they know that poly B is a subpar component, like you had said. However, there are insurance companies that will insure it. There are plumbers out there that will suggest if it does not leak, then there is no deficiency with it. So there is no reason to disclose poly B plumbing. It's something that if dealt with correctly, it doesn't change your home. It doesn't negatively impact your home. It's more the effect that when you get an inexperienced agent that doesn't understand these things on the buying end, and you're representing the seller, they'll get these $30,000 quotes for replacement, and they'll come back at you and try and attack you for that. Now, to alleviate that, I've suggested to lots of my clients to have it removed as well, to alleviate the stress of that, because it's something that is real. Now, if it was myself dealing with an experienced buyer, knowing that, we could get a plumber in there on inspection day to explain this to them, because I'm not a plumber, I'm not going to suggest the integrity of something like that. However, a good plumber will explain that your insurance may be a bit higher and that poly B is a subpar product. That's why they've come up with PEX. But if it's not leaking, it's technically not deficient. So it's something that you can pick away at over time if you need. But some of these houses will not have issues for the time that you do own them. So.
Crazy part about the insurance aspect of it, I have a client just bought a house built in 2007. Doesn't have poly B, but it has PEX in it. And he called me and he's like, I thought poly B was the one that the insurance companies own. I said, well, that's my understanding. He said, these guys are telling me I have to rip all this PEX out to put the new updated PEX in.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to call it. And she said, yeah, that's just what this insurance brokerage wants, and if not, then they won't. So then we went with a different one.
And that's a very good point, Curtis. Calling around to get the best option for insurance is imperative.
100%.
I guarantee that most people call around and find the best realtor that's going to suit them and get them the needs that they want. No different than you call around and get the best mortgage professional to get you the best interest rates, the most flexible mortgage plan. Why wouldn't you call around for insurance? Just because you had it with these guys, or just because your buddy said to use this person. It's subjective. And a lot of insurance companies are owned by the states, where a lot of these problems with poly B happen because of some of the chemicals they're putting in the water in the states. Now, the most issues I've heard of in Grand Prairie and northern areas in Canada for issues with poly B are when it's exposed to UV light. So it's very uncommon that your poly B will be exposed to UV light. However, when it does happen, it deteriorates the plumbing. So it's something that we're basically being tarnished with because these larger corporations are owned through the states and they're using blanket clauses now. Poly B is bad, so they're trying to eliminate that to make less claims for themselves down the road. Now, I understand that, but there are companies out there that don't look at it as a blacklisted item, no different than wood stoves and things like that we deal with often as well.
And I think the poly B isn't a deal breaker, and it shouldn't be something that's scary. Yes, it has its own challenges, but there's lots of other things with a brand new house that's going to have its own challenges.
Yeah.
Does that house fit you? Is that house the right house for you? Then that poly B can be fixed for probably a minimal cost of what that house truly means to you, if that's the
Right.
house, right?
Exactly.
That's my opinion.
One last thing I want to touch on too, over in the beginning phase of this, because we're short on time today, is about the roofs. We had kind of briefly touched on that too.
Mhm.
So when you guys get out of the car, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
On the
We
roof?
definitely have to look at the south facing peak.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And why is that? Because of the sun and the heat, and that's where you see most deterioration of the span of your lifespan of your roof.
Yes, we do see the most stress on that south-facing pitch of the roof every time. And that's the one that'll tell you the most accurate indication about the wear of the shingles. So
And
it's,
we're not inspectors, but when we go there, we can obviously see them curling, and we've seen enough roofs of what's really bad curling, what's just starting to curl. I'm never gonna tell you, hey, you're gonna have 5 years max on this, but I'm gonna say, I bet you inspector will tell you you have X to X, but we'll see when the inspector gets there what their thought is, and they might not even know because they're not a roof expert either.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, you have a good idea, and that's another thing that shouldn't be too fearful. If it's the right house, you can always figure out costs, or at the end of the day, it's just a nice peace of mind to have a house. I bought my house and the roof was done. Ready to do it within the first, I don't know, month and a half. But it's a peace of mind that I now own this house,
Mm.
and for the time I have this house, I'm not gonna have to do the roof. I'm not gonna have to stress about that roof. So I mean, that's just another flip side of the coin. You could say, okay, well, if we have the funds to do the roof, it's just another peace of mind of this house that I like, that another good thing is taken care of.
and Curtis, you're absolutely right. We're not inspectors.
Exactly.
However, I have learned, and I've trained all of you guys the same, that we go to as many, if not every inspection that we possibly can, because we learn about houses every day that we're there as well. And maybe it's mundane, and maybe they're all the same, but when your agent is there with you, and there's very few that I have missed in my 10 years of doing this, and it's been extenuating circumstances that I couldn't have made it, and oftentimes when I'm not there, one of you guys is there in my place and vice versa. But the reason we do that is because it definitely benefits you in that pre-stage of buying that house up until, which is what this episode's about, getting the inspector in there. So there's as little red flags that appear during a home inspection as possible, so that you know confidently going into that inspection that there should be nothing obvious that should ever deter you from purchasing that home. And at that point, then when the inspector does his in-depth review of the property, which we all use very reputable inspectors for that reason.
Ones that also go up on the roof.
Yes.
On the
Not
roof,
just
yeah.
using drones or cameras or
Do you know what I
whatever.
think a big advantage to us going to those home inspectors, I personally feel, is your agent builds a good relationship with that inspector. I don't know how many times I've called an inspector in the middle of a showing, he's like, hey guys, let's figure this out. Like, hey, this is what I'm seeing, and then I have a general idea of what's going on there for my clients. Where I didn't have that good relationship with my inspector, maybe he won't answer the phone call. But every time I call him, he'll answer.
Moreover, any questions the client may have post-purchase of home, a lot of our inspectors are happy to go back and
Oh, yeah.
answer those questions. Hey, you know, there was snow on the ground. We didn't get a great look at the grading. I can come back in the spring and have a better look and give you a better idea of how that looks. You know, we can have a better look at those shingles on the south-facing side. Whatever those situations are, the inspectors that we work with are happy to go back and help those clients because they have that relationship and it's their name on the line as well. And they want our clients to have a great experience of having purchased those houses as well.
I just want to kind of stand up for home inspectors a little bit here too, because I think that there's a thought that they're maybe a jack of all trades. They're a home inspector. They've gone and done a course to be a home inspector. I don't think that we use anybody who doesn't know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. But at the end of the day, they're not a licensed journeyman electrician. You're not a roofer. You're not any of that stuff. I had one this spring where the panel was full. It was full, and my guys,
The electrical panel.
the electrical panel, sorry, yeah. And the clients were not happy that it was full, and the inspector didn't tell them. And he's like, guys, I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, I'm not an inspector, or I'm not an electrician to be able to tell you that this is full to its capacity. I can just tell you that things aren't double tapped, and breakers work properly, the general function of that stuff.
And they
Yeah,
can only
you
see
know,
what they can see too. They can't see behind walls. They can't be invasive in any
That's
way.
right.
So
I
they're in
remember-
a house for like 3 hours, and they have their checklist and they catch as much as humanly possible.
Mhm.
But it's like, I know I will be in a house for 2 weeks before I'll notice something.
sure.
you know?
However, we do use folks also that have the moisture meters and
That's
and
right.
all those things that can as much as we are not able to see through a wall, they can see
They
through the
can
wall
see through.
to see what's going on. So we
Yeah.
do use people that are up to date on their tech and not just relying on it as well. They're using the visuals aspects, their integrity from their profession mixed with the technology, which is the perfect blend of someone that's going to be able to see as much as they can to make sure it's the best house going.
So when I meet a client for the first time, I always try to explain that. Like, I feel that I've sold enough homes and been in this long enough that I have an idea of what we're looking for. So we have no surprises. Obviously, I can't look in the attic. I can't pull a furnace apart. There's things that we can't do ourselves as inspectors do. But we have a good idea of what we're up against. Hey, the roof is in rough shape. Hey, maybe there's some signs of moisture or whatever. Doesn't mean it's not the house for you. We'll get to see what happens at the inspection, right? And so that's what I try to do when we go to show a house when we get up to the door. I try to pick apart the things that might
Be issues.
be an issue, maybe it might not, but then we know when we get to the inspection, we always let the inspector, hey, we've seen this, can you focus a little bit of time on this? And they always do.
And we're not trying to be Debbie Downers when we're taking buyers through a home. We're literally just trying to point out as much so they can be as aware of everything in the home to make their decision about purchasing. And then like when the home inspector is done, like you said, it's more of a honey-do list, a home maintenance task,
Yeah,
things that just need to be.
I always think of the inspection report when it gets to my clients. Well, this is like your home manual. You know where everything is now. If you need to know where your water shut off is, bring up your home inspection report on your phone, click on the plumbing section, and everything will be there for you. It's such a
Going to the
comprehensive.
inspection is huge too.
Yes.
Because you get to see
They
all
need
that.
to be there for
And
sure.
if they're not able to be for whatever reason, which does happen, that's again why we go. Because when we can explain that inspection report, and all the inspectors that we use obviously will call the client if they're not able to be there and verbally explain everything that happened in the inspection. They all take lots of pictures to show you as well, but moreover, if we're there, we can help explain that as well. So sometimes clients aren't able to be there. We've all done houses sold sight unseen where the client's not even here, and that's challenging, but we do everything that we can to make sure that that client feels okay purchasing that house, that we've been there to see that there's, no major red flags or anything that's come up or anything that hasn't been explained to them about the process of that inspection, so.
And that's why we really take pride in what we do. So we're not just those people that are pushing the paperwork and making the sale happen just to get it done. We want to make our clients happy, we want to make them aware, and we want to be transparent about the whole process. And this is part of it. Right? It's what we're
Still-
good realtors do.
I feel like in this market, you have to understand because there isn't a lot of houses right now. And so people obviously need a house and they're whatever, but there's things that we need to inform them of for later on down the road. I always say, like, I get the market's tough right now and it's not easy. But there might be a time that you have to sell this house and the market isn't going to be as hot as it is right now. It will be stale. It will be tougher. So we have to take things into consideration of busy streets and what's behind us and neighbors and things like that. So we're always not trying to pick them out, even though it's a hard market right now. We still want people to know what they're getting into for the future as well.
And listening to those clients' needs.
Yes.
And sometimes their needs are overlooked by them when they find something that's flashy and shined up and well flipped inside. But they won't remember that they didn't want neighbors.
Or a
behind them.
two-story.
They didn't want a two-story, or the bedrooms are just big enough for their kids today, but in 5 years they won't be able to fit a twin or a queen bed. Those are things that we have to remind clients of, because our whole goal is to get a client into a house for 10 plus years, if that's their goal, to be there and not have to move. If they decide to upgrade or downgrade or move town or whatever that is, that's something that we help with. But getting them into something that's going to be long-term is always our goal, because we're those agents that look out for the client's better interest in the long haul. And that's how we've built our businesses over this time, is by taking care of the people and not just rushing to get you into a house in a busy market to say that we got you a house and overlooking the fact that this house is only going to be good for 3 to 5 years and you're going to need to sell. Because in 3 to 5 years in a basic market, you may not get that return enough to make money off of that. Things have been great the last couple of years, but we've all been in different markets where it's not been the case. And thinking of them long-term, thinking of resale, thinking of all these things that can help them are key.
I want to be people's realtor or my client's realtor for life, as long as they live in Grand Prairie. So the last thing I would do is sleep at night and say, I know this isn't the right house for them. And at the end of the day, I can't talk them out of it. It's their house, that's their decision.
Of course.
But obviously listening to them, wanting to sell that house for them later on down the road, wanting to do more business, help their family, I feel that I have an obligation to show them the rights and the wrongs and the goods and the bads and the uglies of the house.
Integrity runs deep with this little team, I assure you.
Yeah.
I've instilled all my views, but all you guys already had them. It's just keeping them all fresh and everybody doing the right thing it's how we've built a great business over the last 10 years of doing this. So
100%.
Well, I think we definitely touched on a few major things that we look for. Are we missing any you want to mention? Throw them
I
out
think
there.
this will be a 2-part series
Yeah,
anyways. I think that this one, there's a lot we didn't get into, aluminum wiring and
Oh
stuff like
gosh,
that.
yes.
You know, this is one that it's likely gonna take us
Right,
a few
right.
episodes to
Yeah.
get a lot of the stuff, and then with any luck, folks will have questions too online, and we'll be able to touch on those maybe in a couple episodes down the road, but yeah, this is a great introduction
Yeah.
to home inspections and how we look at houses for sure.
Love it. Okay, guys. Well, this was a good one and a good chat, and more chats to come about this stuff and all the issues that we see as realtors and try to foresee.
That's right.
Yeah, that's why realtors are what was-
Imperative.
Imperative. That's the
I think
word.
you're a realtor.
Yes.
It's imperative to have a good realtor working for you.
Anyways, if you need help with real estate and buying or selling, you now know who we are and what we're all about. So give us a call and we'd love to help you out.
And
And
more to
thanks
come.
for watching. More to come.
Have a great day.